Welcome, PECS and Politics, episode 2, coming to you live from my car on this beautiful day here in the Netherlands, which is where I live, even though I talk mostly about British politics, funnily enough. Let's get that camera up a little bit so I don't need to bend over. So what I want to talk about today, I want to talk about political correctness, particularly in relation to those people who voted Leave in the Brexit referendum. Let's face it, they are talking now about having a second referendum. There are people pushing the idea of having a confirmatory vote because, well, people said that there's a lot more information now that people have that we didn't know. And the fact is, there are even politicians who are saying, well, I know a lot more now about the European Union than I did even 3 years ago, or almost 3 years ago, when it was the referendum, or when I was fighting for one side or the other of the referendum. So even those people who we entrust to be the experts on such a topic are even saying, well, I've learned a whole lot about the European Union that I didn't know several years ago. So it's been a learning process. And of course now we will finally find out what the deal is, and then we being asked to vote on that as opposed to just the concept of leaving. But anyway, I'm not here to argue for or against another referendum. That could be maybe for another time. But what I am here to say is, people say it's patronising to say that Leave voters didn't know what they were voting for. I think it's patronising not to be honest with people. The fact is, most Leave voters didn't know what they were voting for. Okay, let me correct myself. Most Leave voters knew what they were voting for, in the sense that they knew when they turned up at the voting booth that they were going to tick a box that said Leave. They probably also knew what that meant, in the sense that it meant leave the European Union, as in don't be in the European Union anymore, and Remain meant stay in the European Union. So they knew what that meant. So they knew that. But knowing what you vote for is very different to saying that you know about what you're voting for. They're two entirely different things. For instance, I know nothing about football. I know very little about football. But if you say to me, I want you to choose between these two footballers, choose which one is the better footballer. And I'm like, well, I have no idea. There's this one and this one. Okay, well, I'll choose this one. I know that I'm choosing that one, but I don't know anything about him. I know I'm choosing him. Maybe because I just like the way the person looks, the way the person dresses, I don't like the face of the other one. For stupid reasons, for uneducated reasons, I've chosen that person because I don't know anything about that person, I don't know anything about their skills, I don't know anything about football. The fact is, you can know what you are voting and what you are choosing, but that doesn't mean you know about what you're choosing. I can know that I want a dog. I want a dog. But do I know what breed? Do I know how much it's going to cost? What inoculations are required, the advantages and disadvantages of a dog, and the advantages and disadvantages of that breed? Do I have the knowledge about that thing to be able to make an educated choice about that which I know I am choosing? Two very different things. So let's be honest. Leave vote, the vast majority of Leave voters know. They didn't have a fucking clue about the European Union. Most Leave voters know fuck all about the European Union, except what is fed to them by the tabloid press and has been fed to them by the anti-European tabloid press for the last 20, 30, 40 years, ever since we joined what eventually became the European Union, and what bullshit comes out of the mouths of really Eurosceptic politicians like Jacob Rees-Mogg and Boris Johnson and other borderline fascist politicians that we have in the House of Commons and House of Lords, and others like Nigel Farage. The fact is as well that we don't know what anybody who voted Leave were actually voting for. We can ask an individual and say, what type of Leave were you voting for? And they say, I wanted a no deal. Right? But I don't remember, and I could be wrong, but I do not remember anybody, any politician, any Brexiteer who was, any charlatan who was trying to push the bullshit idea of leaving the European Union saying, well, we should leave the European Union with no deal. It would be the best thing to do. I don't remember anybody pushing that. I remember hearing Daryl Hannan say, nobody's talking about leaving the common market. No one's talking about leaving the single market or the customs union. No one's talking about that. He specifically said that. I also remember hearing even Nigel Farage saying, well, Switzerland are very happy with what they have, and Norway are very happy we can have what they have. Well, they also have agreements. Norway is in the customs union and the single market. So nobody that I recall was talking about leaving on no deal. And even if they were, the fact is there were various different types of Brexit being sold. So all these politicians, particularly conservative politicians, who say, we don't need a second referendum, it's disrespecting democracy, Leave voters knew what they were voting for. Okay, they knew what they were voting for, but they didn't know about what they were voting for, and they didn't even know which version of what they were voting for was going to become the reality in the end. But let's get down to the political correctness of it. Leave voters, like me with football, let me start by insulting myself. I am thick as pig shit when it comes to football. I'm also pretty thick as pig shit when it comes to maths, when it comes to most issues around science, when it comes to space exploration, when it comes to lots of periods of human history I know very little. I am thick as pig shit ignorant about those things. Now let's be honest, most British people, even Remainers, are thick as pig shit ignorant when it comes to the European Union. Now I studied politics at A level, half of which was about the European Union. I studied at university politics. I did a whole year about the European Union as well. Then I was a teacher. I was teaching politics at A level. I've been to the European Parliament. I've spoken in the European Parliament. So you'd expect me to have a better knowledge than most people about the European Union. But I still wouldn't say I'm an expert. Because let's be honest, like any political system, it's not easy. It's quite complicated. It's got all sorts of procedures. It's got all sorts of organisations. It's got all sorts of different functions, and it's constantly changing and evolving as well, believe it or not. So there's a whole load of policies and laws and treaties that I should probably be able to memorise, but I can't. So the fact is, most people, even the people who have knowledge of the European Union, there's so much more we could learn about it, and so much more we should know about it, but most of us don't, because in our day-to-day lives we get most of our information from TV, radio, newspapers, and most of those don't really tell us an awful lot about the European Union, and they never have done. And when they have done, it's been pretty negative stuff in tabloid press, which is usually bullshit most of the time. So that's the sort of thing that's been fed to us. In the same way, actually, that we didn't know exactly what Leave voters were voting for, we didn't actually know what all Remainers were voting for. I'm a passionate pro-European. I would even say that I'm a federalist. I would happily live in the United States of Europe. I have no problem with that, and I have no problem admitting it. But I get that not everybody voted Remain supported that. I do believe that the European Union should change and reform, but there were probably people who voted Remain who were maybe reluctant Remainers, who thought, well, I don't know, but probably on balance it's better for the economy to stay there. And I would say they're more pragmatic Remainers. There's also other people, and this is a view that I do understand, there were probably Remainers who voted this way, but also Leavers who voted this way, who said, well, listen, I do want to be in a customs agreement, I do want to be in the economic element, but I don't want to be in a political union. I can understand that argument. I don't agree with it, but I can understand it. And there were possibly people who were Remainers who voted because they were worried about the economic impact of leaving, so they voted Remain. But there were also Leavers who voted that way because they did dislike the political element so much that they wanted to leave. But either way, we cannot sit there and say, we know what the people voted for. We have to respect the choice of the people. What the fuck is the choice of the people? We don't even know what that is. Now, I don't like referendum. And I said I'm not here to argue for necessarily a second referendum, although I'd probably think it's the only real way out of this nonsense that we've gotten ourselves into, this chaotic situation that the United Kingdom currently is in. However, referenda are not great. The only way referenda, the plural, but people also say referendums, the only way referenda can really be effective is if you have an informed, educated population. And let's be honest, the United Kingdom is not the best. And that's not necessarily the people who are ignorant, it's not their fault necessarily. Part of the problem is we have a very divided, patchy education system, which in some places is very good and in some places is bloody awful. We also have a population who, I'm sad to say, is far more obsessed with voting for X Factor or voting people off Big Brother than they are in voting in the political system and showing an interest in the political system. People are far more interested in soap operas, reality TV, football, and all that sort of stuff that doesn't really affect your lives, but is interesting and fun. And I get it. It's easy to understand, and therefore you can vote on it because it's easy to understand. You know, who's my favourite singer? Which is my favourite singer? A, B, C, or D? Well, C is my favourite singer. I choose C. There's not much controversy around that. It's who's your favourite singer. There's not going to be any impact on the economy or your life necessarily, or whether you lose your job or not, just because you choose a singer to win the X Factor. However, you are going to have an impact on lots of people's lives, including mine, because I live here in the Netherlands and you're fucking up my life potentially, and me not knowing where I stand, because you go and choose to vote a certain way based on no knowledge about it whatsoever, except the fact that you think you hate Europeans, you don't like immigrants coming over, you don't like hearing foreign languages being spoken, and you've read the Sun for the past 20, 30 years and believe that the European Union didn't want us to eat straight bananas anymore. Now, I'm going to say this, if you voted based on that limited knowledge, then you are an idiot. In the same way that I was a bit of an idiot recently when I went along and voted in a local election here. Well, I wasn't allowed to vote in a local election. The only part of the election I was allowed to vote on was for the water board. And I thought I was allowed to go on and vote in the local election for local parties who were the same as national parties. And I know a little bit about the national parties, so I went along there preparing to vote for D66 or GroenLinks. But I turned up, and all it was names of different water suppliers. Now, how the fuck am I supposed to choose that? I can know which one I'm going to choose, but I didn't know anything about which one I was going to choose. I was thick as pig shit about that, because I probably should have done my research a bit better. I probably should have read the voting slip a bit better to have known what I was choosing, but I wasn't. I was a bloody idiot for not doing that. But I was also an idiot because I didn't do any research. I didn't take any time out to find out about these things. And the fact is, when people said, oh yeah, well, we don't know about the European Union because they don't tell us nothing about it, you've got the internet. When I was young, you had to go to the library, or if you didn't have a book about what you wanted to know, you had to order in a book and wait a week or two for it to come in. Now you go on the internet, you can find out, what is the European Union? What does it do? And I'm sure there are websites out there that simplify it somewhat for the thickest of pig shits out there. So there we go. I'm fed up of the political correctness that people, particularly Brexiteers and the Conservative Party, say, well, we have to respect the people's vote. The people knew what they were voting for. Yeah, they knew they were voting Leave, but they didn't know anything about what they were voting for. They know nothing about what the European Union is. I have been a pro-European ever since I was a teenager, once I started studying foreign languages and fell in love with the continent and then fell in love with the principle of the European Union. Not that it's perfect, that it might need reform, but the idea of the European Union, I know, will forever stand up to defend it. And I have been defending it against people for the last 20, 25 years. Not once have I argued with anybody who I thought, oh yes, they're very well informed, they have a cohesive argument against the European Union. The arguments are always the same. We don't want those Europeans telling us what to do. We want to take back control. We don't want to share any power with any other organisation. We want to stand on our own 2 feet. We want to bring back Great Britain. We want to make Britain great again. You are idiots. That's all I have to say. Sorry if I've offended you. No, I'm not. I don't care. Bye.